Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Goranga. Jai Radha Madhava Kunya Bihare Jai Radha Madhava Kunya Bihare Gopi Jana Malaba Girivardhare Gopi Jana Balaba Girivardhare Yasodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tera Vanachate Yamuna Tera Vanachate Jairanu Madhava Kunyabikhaji Jairanu Madhava Kunyabikhaji Gopijana Malaba Hiri Bharadhari Gopijana Balaba Hiri Bharadhari Yasudanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasudanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tera Banachati Yamuna Tera Banachati Jayarantu Madhva Kunyabikhaji Jayaradhu Madhava Kunyabikhaji Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Parvatikacharya also Tada Satashi. Vrindavan ki jai. Pacharanam ki jai. Jagannath Swami ki jai. Yamunamai ki jai. Shimati Lasidevi ki jai. Sama Veda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. To the Prabhupada Ki Jai. So today we are reading from the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 43rd chapter, text 33. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Priyang Vajna Prakurvatja Shreyo Vinante Vai Praja Manasa Karmana Vacha Viparitam Ato Anyata Priyam Rajya Prakurvatya Shreyo Vindanti Vai Praja Manasa Karmana Vacha Viparitam Atonyata Priyam Rajya Prakurvatya Shreyo Vindanti Vai Praja Manasa Karmana Vacha Viparitam Atonyata Priyam Rajya Prakurvatya Shreyo Vindanti Vai Prajaha Manasa Karmana Vacha Viparitam Atonyata. Okay. Okay. Priyam, the pleasure. Ragna of the king. Vakur executed. Shaya, good fortune. Vindante, acquire. Vai, indeed. Prajaha, citizens. Manasa, with their minds. Karmana, with their deeds. Vacha, with their words. Viparatam, opposite. Ata, to this. Anyata, otherwise. Translation. Subjects of the king who try to please him with their thoughts, acts, and words are sure to achieve good fortune, but those who fail to do so will suffer the opposite fate. As you can repeat, subjects of the king who try to please him with their thoughts, acts, and words are sure to achieve good fortune, but those who fail to do so will suffer the opposite fate. So, no commentary by the followers of His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. So, Jiva Goswami and Sanatana Goswami write short commentaries. So, Jiva Goswami should not refuse this. The scriptures speak of the proper conduct. For Korvantya is poetic license. The citizens attain material benefit or artha shreya in pleasing the king. And Sanatana Goswami states, to do the opposite is not proper. Pleasing the king by mind, acts, and words brings the best results. The citizens must please the king by means well known, or because by pleasing the king brings the best results, you have been called. Not pleasing the king, anyata, brings opposite results. Okay, again. Priyam ragna kurvacha shreyo vandanti vai prajaha manasa karmana vacha viparitam atonyata. So, omagana timadandasha gananjana shilakaya chakshur unmiditam yena tasmai shigurave namaha. So, there's different ways to understand this particular statement. Of course, one way to understand it is that they're actually threatening Chanura here. Is actually saying, you better listen to the king or else you're going to be in trouble. So that's like on the gross material platform. And another way to understand it is that according to the Vedic system, Varnashram system, the citizens should try to please the king. So it's actually quite important, according to the Varnashram system, to please the king, because the king, a bona fide king, is Nara Deva. That means he's the representative of the Supreme Personality of God. He's God in human form, basically, isn't it? Nara Deva, God in human form. Oh my God. Sounds like Sakshari Tvena Samasta Shastrir Huktastatya Bhavyata Eva Sadbi. And sometimes the spiritual master, of course, this is not an advertisement for spiritual master, but the spiritual master is considered the supreme personality of Servitor Godhead. And Krishna is the supreme personality of served Godhead. So, one offers respect. So the spiritual master is considered a representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the king. Not only the king, and we find in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's time that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu considered in his discussions with the Kazi to be the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Which is interesting because basically anyone who's given a position, then that position comes because the Lord facilitates or agrees for the person to have that position. However, that's not necessarily indicative that the person is qualified. So you may ask, why does Krishna agree to give that person a position? Well, I mean, just like you see in the case. All right, let's go to the case of one of my favorite kings. Actually, probably my favorite. Vena. Vena was definitely not qualified. I mean, his he took after his mother. His mother's daughter of fear personified or death personified, whatever. And his father, Anga, really just left the kingdom out of frustration, but in ecstasy, because Vena, being a rascal, I mean, so much a rascal that he was going out to play with his friends and he'd come back alone and his friends would all be dead. Kill him. Nice kid. So, anyway, so he became the king and he was really good at certain things. What things was he good at? Curbing down the miscreants. He's really good at that. But he wasn't so good at, let's say, his religious principles or caring for the brahmanas. He considered himself to be not only Nara Deva, but, Deva, the god of gods, so to speak. And he wouldn't let them do any sacrifices and everything like that. So he was unqualified as a king. So to serve someone like that, who was unqualified, then one doesn't get any benefit. Of course, one may get a little protection. You may be, what do they call it, chumchaw? Chumchaw? You don't know what that is. That means like a spoon in Hindi. It means a yes man. And you may get, temporary protection, but you're not going to get Shreya. So here the word Shreya is used in this verse. We have these two words, isn't it? Shreya and Preya. Prabhupada himself describes Preya as like temporary benefit and Shreya as long-term benefit. Sometimes you get some temporary benefit. For example, let's say if you eat the wrong things, you get the temporary benefit of having some satisfaction there. But permanent, or not permanent, but longer term benefit is you get sick. So you don't get that benefit. You don't get that Shreya, long term benefit. Of course, so the ultimate long term benefit is Krishna consciousness. So anyway, so someone doesn't really get any long term benefit, Shreya, from serving someone who is not a king, qualified as a king. So Vena, of course, wasn't served by the Brahmanas. He was cursed by the Brahmanas and killed by the Brahmanas. And that's the Brahmanas' duty. So the king in the Vedic system is not an absolute monarch. There's checks and balances. Actually, I was hearing one thing from Prabhupada. A very interesting statement. He said even the members of the Congress, like not talking about Republicans and Democrats right now, but the members of the Congress can be Brahmins, which is interesting. Even though in America they're a legislative body, but in the Vedic system, the members of the Congress would be an advisory body. The king, the Brahmins, would actually advise and actually tell the kings what to do. We find in the Ramayana, whenever Lord Ram wanted to do something, he would consult the Brahmanas. Or when the Dasarath, for example, he wanted to have a son or sons. And so he consulted the Brahmanas like Vashishta Muni. The Vashishta Muni was always there giving him advice. He had to listen to Vashishta Muni. Of course, he was trained up at the ashram of Vashishta Muni in that obedient mood. Nowadays, of course, the word obedience is kind of passe, isn't it? Obedient. So, brahmachari gurukule, what is it? Vasandanta garorhitam. The brahmachari goes to the ashram, the gurukul. So, of course, the gurukul in those days wasn't an institution. The problem in ISKCON, it's institution. You understand? Institution, you got a large building, and with thousands of not thousands, obviously, but many teachers. But in the Gurukul in those days was actually like a family. It was just like a family. The Gurukul consisted of basically the guru, his wife, because in those days, the sannyasi wasn't going around, having a gurukula. Usually, I mean, there's some exceptions, like Narada Muni had his gurukula at Nardakund. But generally, the point is this: the guru would be married, and especially if they were taking care of a lot of kids. It's not that a brahmachari would be taking care of, isn't it? Like, this is one of the issues that happened in ISKCON, that you had the brahmacharis taking care of little kids. I don't think that's so appropriate. Like that, like in years ago, one of the first schools in ISKCON, unfortunately, I was one of the teachers at brahmachari, 21, 22 years old. No, 21, I think. And I had 5 little boys of 5 years old. Mothers had dropped them off at Gurukula. And they were crying for their mother, and I, being very philosophically astute, was preaching to them that Ma means Maya. You understand? Ma, Maya. You probably actually said the same thing, not in regard to that, but in regard to, Ma. So, and Krishna's your real father, Radharani's your real mother. It didn't work out too well. They kept crying, and then, anyway, so many issues. And so that wasn't appropriate. So the Gurukul was actually like Vasishtha Muni. He was married. And therefore, Lord Ramchandra was brought up in his Gurukula. I mean, I'm certain that the parents were nearby. It's not that they weren't aware of what was going on. And he developed this mood of obedience to Vasishtha, isn't it? And so whenever he wanted to do anything, I mean, Dasaratha also, because Vasishtha Muni was the acharya for this whole dynasty. From the beginning, he was the acharya for the dynasty. He lived a very long time. And so there was this obedience, not only to Vasishtha Muni, but to Brahmins, too. When Visvamitra Muni came, and he wanted to take away Ram. First of all, Dasaratha didn't like the idea. But then Dasaratha had to give in because, he was afraid, of course, of Visvamitra Muni's anger. And Vasishtha Muni advised him in this particular way to follow what Visvamitra Muni was saying. So anyway, so it wasn't an absolute monarchy. There are checks and balances, and you could have a coup d'etat. But the coup d'etat was not like the French Revolution, right? Where, off with their heads, put the king and queen to the guillotine, have their heads chopped off. But it was from the Brahmanas who decided, and the Brahmanas also decided who was going to be the king. Not only did they decide if the king wasn't qualified to get rid of the guy, but they decided who would be the king. Even if there were 2 children and one was qualified, the other one wasn't qualified, even if there was an older boy who was more qualified, just like in the case of Dhritarashtra, he was older than Pandu. Generally they did follow the rule of what's called primogeniture. Primo means first genitor, born. Genitor means born. So, but in this case, it was decided by the Brahmanas, and Vidura, of course, gave the most cogent advice. It was decided by the Brahmanas that Dhritarashtra could not become the king. The king would have to be Pandu because Dhritarashtra was blind, and the king obviously wasn't someone who just sat on his royal asana. Sorry. Wasn't someone who simply sat on his royal asana, but he got in the front of the battlefield and fought, and he was injured in many cases or even died in certain cases. I mean, that was a king. He was heroic. That's the nature of a Kshatriya. So, so anyway, so the king was chosen by the Brahmanas. The king was deposed by the Brahmanas. And so the Brahmanas were ultimately the ones who decided, but they never took power. And they lived voluntary. There was no conflicts of interest either. They lived voluntarily at the mercy of charity. And basically, they didn't bank a lot of money, build up large fortunes. They would give things away. I mean, it's like the Brahmins. Was it the sacrifice of King Marut? They were like mountains of gold. And basically, later on, the Pandavas were able to collect those mountains of gold because the Brahmanas didn't take it all with them. Probably they would have drowned had they tried to carry all the gold. There's some stories about people being very greedy and having gold and then trying to cross a river and then drowning because gold is very heavy. So, anyway, so in this particular case, Kamsa is not really, in essence, a king, although he's taken that position. How did he take that position? He, instead of being appointed by the Brahmanas, he put Ugrasena in jail, his father in jail. And Kamsa really had to, he was a demon. He was Kalanemi, right? A demon. Not only that, his father was not Ugrasena. His father was Drumila, not the Drumila we love here, but Drumila, who's a demon who took the form of Ugrasena and approached Padmavati, who was Kamsa's mother, and she was a little addled in the mind, too, according to the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. You know, I mean, somehow or other she had some challenges in her mind. So anyway, in this particular case, Kamsa was definitely not a king. So serving Kamsa would not bring one all good fortune. It may bring one temporary protection. So I'm going to read some statements by Prabhupada about who a king actually should be, or what a king should be, what a king's qualities are. And here are some statements from one from the 9th canto, 9th chapter, text 30. The word Rajarshi refers to a king who behaves like a rishi or sage. So the king is, in fact, the representative of God. He's a sage. He's educated. He's Dvija. He's second initiated. Such a king is also called Naradeva. That's the word I used before, because he's considered representative of the Supreme Lord, because his duty is to rule the kingdom to maintain Brahminical culture. He never desires to kill a Brahmin. So here's an interesting point. Generally, a Brahmin, woman, child, old man, or cow is never regarded as punishable. So what did Kamsa do? He was responsible for killing children, right? No? Yes? He didn't kill Krishna, but Putana actually did other things with other children. And then he was responsible for trying to kill a child. Krishna was not fully, an adult at that particular point. According to the Acharyas, he appeared to be 16 years old, but it was like 12, right? According to the Acharyas. So, child abuse. He's guilty of child abuse, trying to kill children. I don't know about old men. So anyway, he was doing the opposite of what a king should do. And here's another statement. This is interesting statements by Prabhupada about kings and people in the royal order. This is from Prabhupada's statements or conversation in this book called Dialectic Spiritualism. And Prabhupada was talking about one of my favorite personalities, Machiavelli, who I study. Anyway, no, not really. I don't study Machiavelli. That would be counterproductive to my carrying out spiritual activities. According to Vedic civilization, the king is worshipped as God, same as Naradeva. If the good qualities are lacking in a king, here's Prabhupada's statement, he can no longer be considered Naradeva, and he cannot rule for very long because his rule is artificial. Therefore, in Kali Yuga, the royal order is finished. because basically the kings are actually Malechas, Yavanas, Rakshasas, whatever. And here's another Prabhupada statement about kings. Uh, this is from the uh, teachings of Queen Kunti. Queen Kunti. They were not ordinary people engaged in drinking and dancing, like we see nowadays, isn't it? The kings, the presidents, or whatever. They were all rishis, sages up to the time Maharaj Pritchard. They were trained up in such a way, which is what I was talking about before. They were not ordinary men who were called Naradeva. The king was worshipped because he was a Rajarshi, both a king and a sage. Shri Krishna says that if a king knows the purpose of life, he can rule well. If he does not, he thinks that eating, sleeping, sex, and defense are all in all. In this case, his subjects live like animals. Today, no one knows the object of human life. So that there's that verse. Nate vidhu swarta gatimi vishnum durasya yeba hirarta manina under yatanda upaniyamanas tepushatantram udamni. But so the leaders of society, Nate vidhu swarta gatim, there's that swarta gatim. They do not know that the goal of life is to worship Vishnu, Krishna. Their mind is absorbed in the material energy. And therefore, anda yatanda, they are blind. And what? They're leading other blind people. Anda yatanda rupaniranas tepi shatantram urudamni bada. Therefore, everyone is falling into the ditch of material enjoyment or material suffering. Prabhupada says, therefore, although the foolish people of this age are trying to be happy, their hopes will never be fulfilled. So there's so many quotes about King. And I just wanted to read one quote here. And there's quotes about the duties. This is important. Actually, I was reading some of these quotes to the GBC meeting, at the GBC meeting yesterday, because I was wanting to stress the duties for protection. That even though most of the GBC will not say that we're Kshatriyas, Kshatriya Brahmins or whatever, then I wanted to stress that our duty is to protect the people, the praja, because that's also mentioned in this particular verse. Praja means those people who are in one's kingdom. So for those who are leaders in ISKCON, actually everyone is your praja in Krishna conscious movement. You cannot make a distinction between someone is your disciple, someone is not your disciple. Specifically for the GBC, we're responsible for everyone in the movement, and actually all the cows too in the Krishna conscious movement, and all the deities in the Krishna conscious movement. It's a big responsibility. It's not a question of having a position and simply enjoying like that. And so the king, the leader, has to be, here's a verse from the Bhagavad Gita. No, it's not Bhagavad Gita. To be influential in battle, unconquerable, patient, challenging, and charitable, to control the bodily necessities, to be forgiving, to be attached to Brahminical culture, and to be always jolly and truthful. Wow. That's hard, isn't it? Think about it. Influential in battle. Of course, I mean, as leaders of ISKCON, we're not supposed to be fighting that much. But, protecting, like Prabhupada said, the GBC has to be what? Prabhupada's watchdogs. Protecting, if there's some Sahaja influence or there's influence of ritualistic Brahmanism, as my friend Kunti has been talking about recently, right? Then the king or the leaders have to be philosophically astute, unconquerable, patient, challenging. These appear to be almost contradictory, isn't it? Patient, challenging, charitable, control the bodily necessities, to be forgiving, to be attached to Brahminical culture, and then finally to be always jolly and truthful. It's hard to balance all these, isn't it? It's really hard. So here's the quote I read at the GBC meeting yesterday. I really like this. Thereafter, this is from the third canto, sixth chapter, text 31. Thereafter, the power of protection was generated from the arms of the Virat form, and relation to such power, the Kshatriyas also came to existence, following the Kshatriya principle of protecting society from the disturbance of thieves and miscreants. So sometimes within society, or even within the Krishna conscious movement, there are miscreants and thieves. It's not that if someone has neck beads and wears a dhoti, or sorry, that they're necessarily devotees. I mean, sometimes people are Ali Chelas, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur states. So, I was making this point yesterday. So the Prabhupada's purport, as the Brahmanas are recognized by the particular qualification of inclination towards the transcendental knowledge of Vedic wisdom, so also the Kshatriyas are recognized by their power to protect society from the disturbing elements of thieves and miscreants. You know, protecting children, protecting women, protecting, I'm just adding to this, it's not Prabhupada's words, but Prabhupada stated this elsewhere, protecting old people, protecting Brahmins. Fortunately, I'm an old person. The word anuvrata is significant. A person who follows the Kshatriya principles of protecting society from thieves and miscreants is called a Kshatriya, not the one who is simply born as a Kshatriya. The conception of the caste system is always based on quality and not on the qualification. Not on the qualification of birth, sorry. Birth is an extraneous consideration. It's not the main feature of the orders and divisions. In other words, one having the position is not the main qualification. One has the qualification, what the actual qualifications. In the Bhagavad Gita, the qualifications the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras specifically mentioned, and it is understood that all such qualifications are necessary before one can be designated as belonging to a particular group. Prabhupada says all such qualifications are needed. They're essential. Lord Vishnu is always mentioned as the Purusha in the Vedic scriptures. Sometimes the living entities are also mentioned as the Purushas, although they are called Purusha Shakti. That means, Prabhupada says in parentheses here, Para Shakti or Para Prakriti, the superior energy of the Purusha. Illusion by the external energy of the Purusha, the living entities falsely think of themselves as the Purusha, although they actually have no qualifications. The Lord has the power to protect, listen to this, of the three. So it's really important for the leaders, still have some time, especially those leaders, to protect the devotees. And to protect, not only the devotees, but the assets, the cows, and everything of the Krishna conscious movement, isn't it? Really important. This is the point I was making yesterday. We take turns sometimes in the GBC meeting. We have the opportunity to pick a verse and read it to the whole GBC at the beginning of the GBC meeting. So yesterday was my turn. The Lord has the power to protect. Of the three deities, Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwara, the first has the power to create, the second has the power to protect, Vishnu has the power to protect, and the third has the power to destroy. The word Purusha is significant in this verse because the Kshatriyas are expected to represent the Purusha Lord in giving protection to the Prajas, or all those who are born in the land or in the water. In other words, to explain in terms of ISKCON, everyone under your jurisdiction. Protection is therefore meant for both men and animals. In modern society, the Prajas are not protected from the hands of thieves and miscreants. The modern democratic state, which has no Kshatriyas, is a government of the Vaishyas and Shudras, and not of Brahmins and Kshatriyas as formerly. Maharaj Yudhisthira and his son Maharaj Parikshit were typical Kshatriya kings, for they gave protection to all men and animals. When the personification of Kali attempted to kill a cow, Maharaj Parikshit at once prepared himself to kill the miscreant, and the personification of Kali was banished from his kingdom. That is the sign of a Purusha, a representative of Lord Vishnu. In other words, acting very strongly, very quickly. Justice delayed is justice what? Does anyone know that verse? Denied. quick justice. I mean, should actually be justice, not that he makes a mistake. That is a sign of the Purusha or representative of Lord Vishnu. According to Vedic civilization, a qualified Kshatriya monarch is given the respect of the Lord because he represents the Lord by giving protection to the prajas. Modern elected presidents cannot even give protection from theft cases, and therefore one has to take protection from an insurance company. Which, if you find out if you have insurance, there's always fine print, right? Well, you're not covered by this. It says in case of a natural disaster. Well, this was natural, and it was a disaster. The problems of modern human society are due to lack of qualified Brahmins and Kshatriyas and the over-influence of Vaishyas and Shudras due to the so-called general franchise. What that means is Prabhupada's not talking about a franchise business operation. He's talking about voting. You know, when you have voting open to everyone, then people vote for the wrong reasons, like they did in the case of Kennedy, because he was handsome, he got elected. I'm not saying that Nixon was any better. But, you know, people vote for the wrong reason, like you see in America. I mean, just like, what are they thinking of? What are they thinking of? I mean, so therefore, the Brahmanas would actually vote. They would take a vote. You know, they would meet amongst themselves and vote and have a discussion about a particular situation. But it's not that you open up voting for everyone. And so the ideal kingdom was led by Lord Ram. So therefore, everyone in India keeps talking about Ram Raj. And ultimately, I want to end with one verse here, that we're not only talking about kings, we're talking about anyone who takes a position of leadership. And I'd like to quote from one verse, 5:18 in the Bhagavatam, famous verse. Guru Nasashat, Swajano Nasashat, Pita Nasashat, Janani Nasashat, Daivam Natatshan, Napatista Sashan, which means one who cannot deliver his dependents from the path of repeated birth and death should never become a spiritual master, a relative. Here, Prabhupada says a relative. It's interesting. A father, a husband, a mother, or worshipful demigod. Certainly, this applies to kings, gurus, parents. It's a great responsibility. So, Kamsa in this particular case was not fulfilling his responsibility. So, I think we have to end. Thank you very much. All glories. Sorry for no time for questions.
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Enam Kanvanda Maravindanalayatam Bhagavatam Shamasitam Buddhasundaram Kandar Bhagavatam Vidamaniya Vishesha Shobha Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Purusha Namaha Bhajami Govinda Adi Purusha Namaha Bhajami Andani Yasa Sakale Priya Priti Manti Vasyanti Vikayanti Gira Mekanti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrasya Govinda Adi Purusha Amaham Bhajami Govinda Adi Purusha Amaham Bhajami Govinda Adi Purusha Amaham Bhajami Govinda Adi Purusha
Namahom Vishnu Daya Krishna Prasthaya Putale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Samani Chinaminai Namaste Saraswati Devi Guramani Pacha Devi Visesha Shunyavadi Vasachavadi Sacharane Asachavadi Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gacchana Shiva Sati Gaura Vrindadaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gacchana Shiva Sati Gaura Vrindadaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gacchana Shiva Sati Gaura Vrindadaya Ate Krishna Kade Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram Hare Hare. Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya, Radha Radha Govinda Jaya Jaya. Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya, Radha Radha Govinda Jaya Jaya. looking at the run, looking at the treasure tail. Looking at the run, looking at the treasure tail. Rate, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Sri Radhe, Jai Om Vishnu, Paramahansa Para.
Kirtanam Nam Namakari Bahudani Jasarva Shakti Tatrapitani Amita Smaranena Kala Tadrishita Vakripa Bhagavan Mamapi Jordaiva Mitrishami Hadjani Nanuraga Trinada Pi Sunichena Sorora Pi Suishuna Amani Namana Dena Kirtani Nadanam Najanam Nasundarim Havitam Va Jagadishakamae Mama Janmani Janmani Ishvare Bhavatad Bhaktir Oitaki Twai Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Vavam Buddha Kripaya Bad Pankajas Nita Duli Sadushim Vachintaya Nainam Sudaraya Varanam Gadgada Hridaya Gira Pula Karnishitam Vapukada Tava Namagrahane Bhavishyati Yugayatam Namishena Chakstusha Pravashayatam Shunayatam Jagat Sarvam Govindam Virahename Pashlisha Vapadam Ratam Manastumam Padarshanam Marmahata Karotuva Yatatata Bhavinato Lampato Matprananatastusa Eva Napara. Victory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life, of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, congregational chanting of your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, And thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you've invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. Oh, my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw on the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O Son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. Oh, my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of you? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so even if he handles me roughly by his embrace or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Jai.